Thank you both for joining me. I'm just going to make sure that I've got the event up on here as well so that I can see the comments for people. So for those watching this, you would have seen already potentially my first in this series. So I decided, because this is Awareness Week is a celebration of all things HSP extrovert, I wanted to interview some ladies that I believe are success stories. And what I mean by success stories is, those of you who followed me for a while will know that I bang on about doing the work. I bang on about becoming an evolved HSP. I got up on my soapbox yesterday I think it was in the friends and family session, where I talked about overcoming hypersensitivity, if that's something that you suffer with, and not using being HSP as an excuse to essentially put your bad behavior all over the place. So that's why I wanted to interview these ladies, or just chat with these ladies really, because I think their examples, I just realized I haven't plugged my microphone in, excuse me for a minute, because people might not be able to see me, hear me. Oh goodness, that's what happens when I try and do 5 things in one day.
All right, hopefully people can people heard that bit, but I know when I'm on my computer sometimes it's a bit soft. So yeah, so I wanted to chat with these ladies just to, I suppose, demonstrate what is possible when it comes to overcoming some of the challenges of being highly sensitive extroverts. And I always like to clarify as well, the challenges come not because we're highly sensitive extroverts, but because of the society that we live in. So the world that we live in isn't really set up for someone with a HSP brain, someone with a HSP nervous system to really be able to function as best they can. We have to kind of overcome some challenges in order to flourish and thrive, just because the world is crazy, busy, noisy, where all the expectations that are put on us to be busy, successful, all that sort of stuff. So that's what I mean by overcoming challenges. It's really just learning to live in a world that isn't set up for our brains and our nervous systems. So I've got a few things that I'm going to go through with Terry and Laura. So welcome Terry, welcome Laura. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and sharing your wisdom and your part of your adventure with the listeners or the watchers. So I suppose the first question I wanted to pose to you both is, when did you learn that you were HSP or HSP-E, and what sort of impact did that have on your life or on your experience learning about being HSP extrovert?
Go ahead, Terry. You can go first.
I was going to say, go ahead, Laura. We're so polite to one another. I've known, in January this coming, it'll be a couple of years that I've known I was HSP. But I didn't understand. Most HSPs I knew were introverts. So for me, there was something that didn't make sense. And I was having a good conversation with someone on the phone who was an introvert. And I just said, well, I think I tend to be extroverted. And they're like, oh my gosh, you totally do. So I'm like, well, maybe I wonder if there's HSP extrovert group out there. And so I did a Google search and I found a couple, and I found this page. And the more I listened to it, the more I understood, hey, I really am an HSP-E. And you can be both, but there's a lot of conflicting understanding about being both. So I'm growing in my understanding all the time, but I definitely needed to understand more. So it's been about maybe a year and a half that I've known as HSP-E.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. And so what was, I suppose, how did that impact you? Was it kind of like, was it a relief, or was it did you feel like it was a burden for a bit? Because people have different kind of reactions to it, I suppose.
I felt kind of broken. For me personally, I was working through a lot of things in my life, and I just thought I was always high energy. And I realized, no, you're not high energy. You're really running in a constant state of being overwhelmed.
Mhm.
So when I
Was that quite
realized that,
confronting? Sorry to interrupt.
yes, it was terrible.
For
I
you?
felt like a really broken person. I felt overwhelmed about being overwhelmed. And it made me feel like I was less than, or there was something wrong with me at first. I can remember talking to a friend of mine. He's actually my a therapist I was working with is the one that pointed out that I was HSP, and when we would talk, I'd be totally off the hilt, being racy with my thoughts and everything like that. It's like, okay, what are you not doing? What have you said no to? Where's your self-care? And it just made me feel like I was a broken person, that I can't function normally. So it took some time to realize that my kryptonite is a lack of self-care, and that's what throws me off the rails. But when I do my self-care, I'm doing great. And HSP is an amazing gift.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. And I love how you came from that, and I can totally understand how at the beginning it perhaps did feel like a bit of a burden or a bit of a curse, because a lot of people experience that same thing. But I love how you've transformed it from that to what you just said about you love it, and it's a beautiful thing. I think that's really, really cool. Thank you. And Laura, how about you?
I would say probably for me, it was about the last year and a half that I really came into an understanding that I was an HSP person. It's interesting though, I bought Elaine Aron's book about 10 years ago and it sat on my shelf and I didn't read it. And probably about a year and a half ago during COVID, when it started, and I actually had time to sit down and think think about how I was feeling about myself, because it's so easy to get busy to kind of not have to think about things. And I realized the same thing for myself. I was just feeling, who am I? I'm getting older, and I'm at this place in my life where I want to the rest of my life to be accepting of who I am and who is Laura. And so I read the HSP book and I went, wow, this is who I am after all these years, because you do kind of grow up feeling different, because you feel so differently, you process so differently, you pick up on everything. And people that don't understand that, as you said, Jen, we live in this world where it's kind of not set up for people that have our brains. You can feel very lonely and very isolated in feeling that way. And so I read that book, and oddly enough, I thought at first I was an introvert, and same as you, Terry, because I was feeling kind of like, okay, here I am, this HSP person. I need help. I need to figure out in more in depth what this means. I need to find support, and I went on the HSP. I went on several Facebook pages, but I loved this one because I related to it so well, and I thought, these people are speaking my language. And I have to say, for me too, I kind of thought, oh, I don't know if I like being an HSP. It must be nice to be somebody who can just carry on in life and not pick up on other people's emotions and not think so deeply. And why is this such a great gift? And this woman by the name of Jen Turman kept saying, it's a wonderful gift to have this trait. And so in working with Jen and doing some of the free group coaching and getting to know her a little bit. And she was also, when I first got on the website, she was reading a book by Pam Group, and I can't remember, something Miracles it was called. And that's when I knew I was really HSP, because I could hardly wait to wake up in the morning and hear her read this book on miracles.
It was
A Course in Miracles.
Yeah.
Course
So
of
it was
Miracles.
like
Yeah.
Pam did a book on the like it was kind of like a funny, entertaining version of the Course in Miracles. So you still kind of learn it, but
Right.
it was done in a different way. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was.
Yeah. And so, you know, getting to know Jen and other people in the group made me start to feel more comfortable with who I was as a person, more accepting. And as I saw all these wonderful people in the group, who they were and how wonderful they were and how vulnerable they were to share their stories and how they were changing and growing, it just inspired me. And I think one thing that really catapulted me was that we did a workshop called Boundaries, and it just came at a perfect time in my life where we were working through how to set boundaries, why we need boundaries. And for me, that was just the beginning of my journey of understanding who I was as an HSP extrovert.
Thank you for sharing that, Laura. Sorry if I seem a little bit distracted at the moment, but the live stream is going I don't know where. So I'm just trying to find it because it says that we're live streaming, but Veronique.
I have a friend that
where
just
are
texted
you?
me that said they can't find it. So
Yeah, where are you? So yeah, so thank you for sharing all of that, Laura. And I love that my stuff has been so beneficial to you. So thank you for sharing. And I do also appreciate you sharing that you had a similar experience to Terry about there was a moment where you kind of were like, oh, I don't want to be HSP extrovert. And I think that's just for everybody watching. I think that is really, it's really valid to feel that way, because I think all of us can agree that it is a blessing and a curse potentially. So it's okay, I think, to have those moments where we go, oh gosh, I kind of wish I wasn't, just for this moment or just because of this situation. And I think I think, let's see if you guys agree, that that's part of, I think, doing the work is the more work you do, the more personal development and growth you do, I think you start to, those moments where you wish you weren't perhaps become further and further in between those moments, and you start to live more in the, yes, this is a beautiful thing and I feel blessed. Would you agree with that it's the work that perhaps helps you shift that way of viewing it?
yeah, I would say so. It because it takes so much, actually so little, to be caught and overwhelmed, having a flood of emotion all the time and really feeling like life is not built for me to live it, is tough. So yeah, it takes a lot of work, but good work, to really slow down and figure out, okay, what do I really need to take care of myself so that I can be my best me and really take advantage of the gifts I've been given.
Yeah, awesome.
And
Thank
and
you.
I would have to say, when I started doing the work at the beginning of the work, and which will be lifelong, because it's a lifelong work that you need to continue to do. But I would have to say, in that journey, for me, the beginning of the journey was, who am I? And I really wanted to feel self-worth. I would have to say my self-worth and my self-acceptance was very, very low. And that's just the honest truth. And so just getting the help that I needed and getting the support that I needed has really picked me up and lifted me up and helped me come into a greater acceptance of who I am, and that my worth doesn't just come from helping others, but my worth comes in being who I am. And that's been a huge leap for me.
Yep.
You know what? I can really relate to that lack of self-worth. I think because we're not like everybody else, it's very, very easy to think, what's wrong with me? Why am I acting this way? Why do I think this way? Why am I so sensitive? Why does nobody else notice this? And I'm like losing my mind because I'm noticing, this is too loud, this is too much for me, but everybody seems to be fine. So yeah, a huge sense of self-worth is really important to that's part of the work of actually being comfortable and growing and being HSP.
And I think, Terry, you might agree with me on this, because we've had these conversations too about how you grow up. And and how sometimes our conditioning is not so accepting of who we are and how we have this trait, because there's not the understanding or the ability of family members to understand that. So it can be also very detrimental to your self-worth and understanding who you are. It's certain things about you growing up, you were conditioned were not acceptable. So
Right.
that, so those are a lot of hurdles that you kind of have to look at, and even looking back as a child and go back and say, well, I was just being an HSP. I wasn't being naughty. I wasn't being this. I was just, my highly sensitive personality was kicking in.
Mm.
You know, I hear that absolutely. I look back and I go, where was my HSP growing up? I think because it was such a hostile environment, it was very, very subdued. My gifts were very subdued, and I learned how to become introverted to stay safe. So the really cool part is to learn about who I am. I don't have to stay introverted to stay safe. I could be a lot of fun and have a good time and really enjoy who I am as a person.
Yep. And it's interesting because you both mentioned introvert, and Laura, I remember you said something about you thought you were introverted, and I just wanted to clarify that, and I've decided to stop trying to figure out where we are live. We've got it recording, so so I'm more with it now. I'm more with you. I've just figured I'll just upload the recording later if the live didn't work. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that introvert thing, because I think I think there are a lot of HSP extroverts out there. So if you're watching this could be you, who actually think they're introverts, like Laura did when she first kind of learnt about it. And I think the reason for that is because if you understand what the HSP trait is all about, and for those of you who are interested in that, there are some education videos that I've posted in the Awareness Week event. They're also on my YouTube channel. But basically, once you understand what being HSP is all about, there are a lot of similarities between that and the trait of being an introvert. And it's when you add extrovert to HSP that the waters get a bit muddied, and it kind of confuses things a little bit. And that's because the two things are very contradictory in a lot of places. So I think the way I kind of visualize it is, I feel like sometimes if you think of the introversion extroversion continuum, I feel like our HSP side almost kind of drags us a little bit more towards the middle of that continuum, which is why we can feel introverted sometimes, because that's our HSP side potentially saying, I need some downtime, my nervous system needs a rest, and it's all of those sorts of things. So the reason I wanted to highlight that is because I think there are a lot of perhaps confused HSPs out there who are extroverts, but they think they're introverts because of the HSP stuff. So I think I encourage everybody out there to, particularly if you're somebody who people in your life say you're an extrovert, because that's usually a pretty good indication, but internally you might not be feeling that way, because what a lot of people do, and I've had clients who do this, they kind of compare themselves with other extroverts and think, well, I can't do that, or I'm not like that, so therefore they think they're not. But it's because you add HSP and it kind of changes things quite a bit. So I encourage everybody watching this to kind of really maybe check out my video on the difference between introverts and extroverts and what happens when you add HSP, because I think having that understanding that you're HSP extrovert can change a lot of things. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong, because there are differences between us and HSP introverts that if you don't understand and learn about those differences, then you may still be suffering as a HSP, because there's different aspects for us that we need to work on that wouldn't be an issue for HSP introverts.
Right.
Yeah. And I think you can be conditioned to be an introvert, like Terry was saying. I know I was, and I know that in certain situations, I was kind of trained, and I took that into adulthood with me to make myself small, because that was the way I was taught was the appropriate way to be. but you suffer in that if you're an extrovert because you can't.
You're suppressing part of you, aren't you?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
want to express who you are, and it's kind of it kind of goes internal, and it can be very damaging.
Yeah, it's really fun now to not make excuses for being outward and wanting to have fun, especially, you know, in my work environment. I have a blast. I play all day, and it's nice to know that's like naturally who I am. And enjoy it, and know you don't have to hold back and keep it back. You don't have to make excuses for who you are. This is really who I am, and I'm gonna have a good time being me.
Love it. And that right there is what I love about seeing people become what I call evolved HSP. So those who've done the work, is that it's you literally, I can see people start to blossom and just really step into their power, step into their greatness, really owning who they are. And I think that's when life can really transform as well, is when we do own who we are and accept who we are. So in terms of getting to that place for you ladies, I'm try and turn my notifications off. This is just confusing me. Technology is attacking us from all directions.
It's true. I'm getting all kinds of messages.
Probably from me, because I'm typing to the group.
Yes.
They're saying where's Terry
from you?
Yeah, it did. And it didn't work.
No, I'm trying to multitask and it just doesn't work. So for the first part of this video, I'm probably looking quite vague. So apologies to everybody.
That's all right. We're creating the livelihood right here.
You guys are carrying this video for me because I've been only half present. So thank you. But I'm back now. As I said, I've decided to ignore the rest of it. So in terms of getting to the place where you are now, and you just share what you're comfortable in sharing in this aspect of it. So what are some of the things that you have committed to as part of your development? So whether it be one-on-one coaching, therapy, BWRT, connection corner, free training, what are some of the things that you've committed to, and maybe why? Maybe share why you decided to do it so that other people can kind of get a insight into your thought processes. And then once we've talked about that, then we can talk about what you noticed. But yeah, what are some of the things you committed to doing, and why did you make that decision to go ahead and do that?
No, Laura's not going to say anything. She's going to wait. We're going to have that thing happen in here. I think at first I did a lot of the free trainings because I just wanted to learn. I think when you figure out your HSP, there's just a lot to learn how to do it and do it well. And I think just to develop a sense of confidence, because as an HSP, there are some things that go awry. For example, I had a lot of people take advantage of who I was as a person because I was so empathetic. So you draw a lot of needy people, and you're really terrible at setting up boundaries. And doing self-care is really important to learn, and figuring out what that really means, and really trying to get your nervous system to work for you. And there were just a lot of life skills I didn't have because I was so hamstrung not understanding I was HSP. So for me, the trainings did it, the connection corner, just to talk to other people who are also HSP and go, oh my gosh, I'm the same way. Oh my, you too? And I think through it, Laura and I have communicated back and forth a number of times outside of the group. We kind of like the Facebook Messenger video calls, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to see that, just to understand you're normal. I love the connection corner because there's little trainings that are easy to implement. And I think doing the BWRT, I've been through a lot of trauma, and I got counseling for the trauma for sure and worked through a lot of the issues, but there's a lot of residual triggers that happen in life. And the BWRT that I did with Jen actually helped deactivate my triggers a lot, so that the things that are used to really get me going and really, remind me of my trauma and really put me in a place of insecurity. Those things um, aren't as active at all in my life anymore since I've done that.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And so what was it that, I suppose, what was it that, what am I trying to ask? So there's a lot of free training in the group for people.
Right.
What was it that made you kind of go, well, no, I actually want to invest in this. I want to actually put some money behind my own personal growth and development?
One, I feel like it's a matter of just being able to learn it, just to learn and invest in yourself. You're learning to grow. I'm 59, and a lot of people my age say, like, this is just how I am. I'm going to be this way the rest of my life. And I feel like learning I'm HSP has given me like a ton of freedom to explore who I am. And I think just the techniques or the little tidbits that we get from the connection corner, they're small tweaks that you implement in your life. And if you implement enough of them, they're easy to do. I always make the joke that 59 steps to be the better person. And that's too many steps for me. But I can implement one or two things this week and see what changes. So there are a lot of life skills like we've even done some role playing, and it sounds rudimentary, but it's not, because if you put what you learn to practice, you actually see things in your life changing. So it's helped me a ton to invest in my own personal well-being in life, and have better control over my environment, set good boundaries, learning how to confront, learning how to work out conflict. Those are huge skills that a lot of people never get a chance to learn. And I feel like as an HSP, I've lived mostly by fear. And I don't have as much fear.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I love what you said about it doesn't really matter what your age is. You can always learn and you can always grow, because I've been a proponent of lifelong development ever since I studied psychology when I was younger. And I know there are people out there that aren't interested in doing any personal growth and development. I know quite a few who are kind of like what you say, well, I am who I am. But I think the difference is that those people are selling themselves short because their previous traumas, their previous challenges in life, their previous, even as something as simple as a relationship breakup, is dictating their future, and they're giving that power away to their past traumas and to their past relationships. And because a classic example is when you have a relationship breakup, if you don't learn your lessons and do the work to overcome perhaps why that relationship broke down, guess what's going to happen? You're destined to repeat itself. So I think it's really sad, to be honest, people who don't want to invest in growing and developing because they're destined to repeat the same mistakes. They're giving their power away to their past traumas and to their childhood, whereas people like you ladies have taken back your own power and gone, no, I'm gonna be the powerful one in my life. I'm not going to let the past dictate my future. So I think that's something to be commended, because not everybody does it. So just to say one more thing, I think is that Laura needs to go for sure, but I feel like it's given me a sense of freedom, and the freedom is addictive. Like, I'm enjoying my life. I'm not worried about what's around the corner. That's awesome, and I'm so glad that you have experienced that, because I imagine it's a beautiful place to be in that sense of freedom. Yeah, with more to come, I'm sure.
Yes, I'm not stopping.
Awesome. Laura, how about you? What are some of the things you've committed to, and what kind of tipped your hand in terms of going, yeah, I'm going to do this?
I was just going to comment on all Terry's books behind her, because my bookshelf is the same. And I'm a lifelong learner as well. So once I kind of hooked myself into Elaine Aron's book, I started picking up every self-help book I could to understand where I've come from, who I am, where I'm going, how to overcome. And Terry, I could totally relate to some of the things you were saying. You know, I've also had some trauma in my life. I lost a brother at a very young age, and that was something that came to light in some of my reading of things, of how far back does some of these things go for me. And so as I was and just again relating it to how those incidents in my life, now knowing that I was an HSP, how I was affected by them and why I was, but I didn't know how to navigate through them. And so I think, you know, like we've stated, I was part of the Bright Sparks group, and doing a lot of the free training. But I just felt, you know what, I need some support. I need to kind of get some tools to navigate through some of these things. I've had counseling in the past over the years when I've been through various things, but I knew I needed somebody who understood what an HSP was. And I kind of, about 2 years ago, I went to see somebody and I said, you know, I think I might be a highly sensitive person. And again, because she didn't have the understanding, this isn't a criticism, because I think there's a lot of counselors out there that don't understand what a highly sensitive person is. Her response was, well, you're not hypersensitive, as Jen has explained in some of the trainings. Like, there's a difference between a hypersensitive person versus somebody who's highly sensitive. And that's how she equated a highly sensitive person. And so I just was like, my heart just kind of went. So in doing the trainings and getting to know Jen through the trainings, because I could see that she was very warm and personable, and she was, you know, that boundaries challenge was huge for me, and working through that as a group built confidence in me, that I thought, you know what, I'd like to maybe see if I could do some one-on-one counseling with Jen. And I think that may help me, because she's also a highly sensitive person. And it certainly has. I can't even thank her enough for all that she's done for me this past year, just helping me with self-awareness. And again, and connecting us to Connection Corner, because we've talked about these things, Terry, as you said, and self-awareness, and just understanding the DOS criteria about that deep processing, and when is it processing versus ruminating. And because I ruminate a lot, or used to ruminate a lot, I'm getting better. And just that whole self-awareness, and practicing and having the support of yourself and Jen and the group, and just being in my office and feeling triggered by something, you know, and just all of a sudden being able to not all of a sudden have to feel reactive or feel overwhelmed by it, or maybe in the moment feeling a little overwhelmed, but being able to go, okay, I'm being triggered, and stopping and taking a breath and stepping away before making a decision about what I'm going to do, or do I need to make a decision. So self-awareness, getting help with that, setting boundaries. I always kind of thought that, you know, being a nurse, I was good at setting boundaries, but maybe in my job, yes, but maybe with my family and maybe with my friends and myself, not so much. So that was huge, because we're so empathetic that we're always looking at the other side of that person and being very caring, even when maybe the behavior isn't very good, that it's at the expense of our own well-being. And so learning that I have worth, and it's okay to step away from a situation and say, no, I have to care for me. And that was huge for me, just huge. And in the counseling with the BRWT, and I think I said it right.
It's a mouthful, BWRT.
Yeah, and I'm sure Jen's going to explain more about what that is. But what really helped me with that was, because we have, when we're traumatized, we have these neural pathways, and because we're conditioned certain ways, we automatically respond certain ways because it's entrenched. And so going through those exercises, I actually wrote them down because I knew Jen was going to ask this question. These are 6 things that really have helped me with that process. And that is, I'm a grown-up. I can speak for myself. I have confidence. So I have confidence. You know, I don't have to be fear. And I know, Terry, what you said, I so related to that whole fear thing. I've lived my
Yeah.
life in fear of other people, of doing the wrong thing, of trying to be perfect. So, you know, I'm confident and I'm equal in worth is the other one. I'm equal in worth and I'm not perfect and I'm only human and I'm doing the best I can. And that has I'm working on those new pathways and that has really helped me. And my latest one that I've added is I'm worthy. And I had a really trying time with a coworker this year, very, very toxic person. And I think if I hadn't been supported by the group and by Jen and going through the counseling and the exercises that I just talked about, I don't know where I'd be today because she would have totally crumbled me. And I was able to go to work, and it wasn't always easy, but learn to set up a boundary, going and putting an energy protection around me before I went in, and just, walk in and I'm confident, I'm equal in worth. And no matter what was thrown at me, to be able to go to work, put a smile on my face and function and get through that because of these wonderful things that we've been learning. And yeah, I don't know what else to add to that. I'm probably going on too much and I apologize for that, but it's just been so much. It's just been so much growth in a year. And like you say, Terry, it'll be a lifelong thing. And sometimes you don't always get it right, but it's the practice.
Exactly. And I love what you said about the new thing for you is I'm not perfect, because a lot of HSPs do have perfectionistic tendencies. So we can work to overcome those. And yeah, just for people that are watching, BWRT is brain working recursive therapy. It's the first thing that's come along since I did my psychology degree where I've actually thought, wow, this could be a really good addition to my psychology degree in terms of how I can help my clients. And I think both Terry and Laura have, and Carol did the other day as well, have attested to how transformational it can be. And the beauty of it is you don't need many sessions. So some of the shifts that we have achieved with clients would have taken literally years in other talk therapies. So that's how effective it is. And traditionally, or the best things that BWRT is effective with is anxiety, trauma, PTSD, any sort of reactions that you feel like are kind of beyond your control because they're kind of ingrained. And as Laura says, you have these pathways that are kind of what your brain uses, but you don't like that reaction and you feel like you can't control it. That's where BWRT comes in. We can help to shift that so you can react in a different way. And as Terry said, it's actually totally kind of changed what triggers her. So those triggers are no longer active, I think is what you said, Terry. So yeah, it's really amazing and exciting. I love seeing the results that you guys are getting with the BWRT sessions. Okay, so I'm mindful of time because it's getting quite late for you guys. So just a couple more things. First of all, if you could just share with the people watching, if you had to say kind of what was your biggest transformation or shift or positive thing that came out of the work that you've done so far, because I know both of you have said it's ongoing. What would you say is the best thing that came out of this work for you? If you had to pick one, you can say a couple if it's hard to pick one.
I think for me, I have a lot more confidence. I think that's probably the biggest thing. I'm not less than anyone else, but I don't have to think I'm more than either. I have gifts and talents, and they're given to me to use, and I'm going to use them and be proud of them and not be ashamed for being different.
Love it.
That's probably the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I agree, Laura. And Laura, for you, what would you say?
I would say the same thing, that I feel like I don't have to make myself small anymore, that I have the freedom. I like that word that you used, Terry. I just turned 56 this past week, and I did a little post on Facebook, and that's what I said. I want I'm coming into a greater freedom of who I am and acceptance. You know, like I said, when we talked about how a year and a half ago, I was like, oh, I wish I wasn't an HSP. It's a burden. Now I see what a wonderful gift it is, and how it can be used for good, and also to know that I can be there for myself. I don't have to find my value in other people, and I can be there for Laura, and I can pick myself back up when I make mistakes, because I'm going to make them, but that doesn't make me less. And yeah, just that shift of self-worth and self-acceptance, and that's huge.
Yeah, and I think being a part of the group, I used to always feel not understood, and I feel like the group is an oasis for a place to be understood. You know, I posted something not too long ago and I said, I know this seems like insignificant, but, and I got like 3 or 4 people going, that's not insignificant. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm with my people.
I love it.
I actually have a funny story about that, Terry.
Yeah.
My girlfriends were all getting together, and they said, let's put together some music of music that's meaningful to you, right? So I picked these deep songs that touched me personally, that were really emotional, and they picked all these fun songs because it was about a great night. So they're pulling out all these songs, and they just want to have a great time. But I was looking forward to having these deep conversations that were going to be about how we've grown and what we've learned from these songs. And I look back that now, that was a great embarrassment, but now I laugh because I understand it's the connection, right? It's that HSP connection that we long for, and you can't have that with everybody. No. You just can't. I mean, they kind of look at you like you're cross-eyed, like, what planet are you from? But when you have people that are deep processors, that long for those connections, that long to be understood, it's so great to come together and just share our heart and know that you're not going to be mocked, or misunderstood.
And I think the cool thing is, I don't feel so compelled to explain who I am anymore. I don't have to get people to understand HSP for my sake. As a matter of fact, I have an HSP-dar. And I find more people that are HSP. I'm like, yeah, just go on the line. Just take this test. I mean, one of the girls in the group, I'm like, yeah, you're you have to be. Just let's check this out. So I have a really huge HSP-dar, and I'm just finding people who are, and it's kind of fun.
I love it. HSP-dar, that's the word of the day.
And I was going to say too that what happens, I found too, is it gives you the freedom to not put expectations on other people that they can't have, that they don't have. Like, that has been huge for me, because I think you said it earlier, Terry. You said, why don't people get this or whatever? Because they don't. It's not their personality.
And it's okay. And they don't have to get it like we do. Yep.
Yeah. And there was a time, I know, at different times in my life where in relationships, I know I didn't handle them correctly, because I was like, well, you're not meeting my expectations. And I know that sounds very selfish, but I think that's pretty normal and for most people, right? And I was looking for give and take. It wasn't just that you're not meeting my expectations, but I was looking for something that they couldn't give.
Well, that's it. I used to go around and say, what's wrong with everybody?
Yeah.
And now they're not HSP. That's what's wrong with
them. They're not wrong. They're just not HSP.
They just,
So instead of thinking something's wrong with us, we just go, oh, well, they're not HSP. They wouldn't understand.
It's okay.
Something wrong with them. How unlucky are they not to be HSP? What a shift.
Okay, I tell you what, I have some friends who are not HSP, and I can have the most lighthearted, crazy, stupid fun when I need it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because we are deep and we crave that connection. I think it's good to recognize that that doesn't mean that we can't have friendships with other people and we can't have really good relationships with non-HSPs, because it doesn't have to be a great divide. Like, as you say, Terry,
Yeah.
you get some really valuable stuff from those friendships as well. And I think it is about, but if you were, the challenge would be if you're expecting perhaps some deep and meaningful conversations with some people, that might be disappointing, because that might just not be the dynamics of the relationship, or they just might not be able to give it to you. As Laura was saying, sometimes we're looking for stuff that they can't give because that's not part of their makeup, their genetic trait. So yeah, I think that's powerful to recognize that, for sure.
And sometimes you just need to come up for some air.
Yeah, exactly.
And not stay deep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes that E means going out and kicking up your heels and having a couple of glasses of wine and dancing.
Woo!
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah, we need that. Yep, definitely. All right, so to finish up, thank you so much again for coming on here and sharing everything that you have shared. And in kind of the last parting words, what advice would you give to people watching who may or may not be HSP extrovert, or perhaps they think they might be but they're not sure, but definitely any other HSP extroverts out there? What advice would you give them if they're looking to perhaps overcome some of the challenges and starting to see their sensitivity as a superpower? What would you say to them?
Take little steps.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that the trainings and the connection corner and the page have helped me do is just take little steps. I celebrate the small wins.
Yep, it doesn't have to be a big shift overnight, does it? It is just those little things that soon add up to a complete transformation in some cases, and a completely different experience of life, for sure. Yeah, love that. And that's much more achievable than thinking it's this big mountain we have to climb. Is just take one step at a time. Thanks, Terry.
Right.
And I'll just tack on to that, because that was wonderful advice. I would just say, if you're out there, you're not alone. You are not alone, and you are fearfully and you are wonderfully made, and the world needs you. And just embrace who you are and take those steps, as Terry said, to find out more about who you are, so that you can love yourself and just be a bright shining star in the world that you are.
Right.
Awesome.
Don't settle.
Yeah, beautiful words. Thank you. So just for people watching, I'm just going to do a quick I've told you a little bit about BWRT. Connection Corner, which Laura and Terry have referenced as well, is our group personal growth and development membership. So the two purposes of Connection Corner are to connect HSP extroverts, because one of the best things for a HSP extrovert is to connect with other HSP extroverts. So that's the first purpose of Connection Corner. And the second one is to access personal growth and development tools at what I believe is a very affordable price, because some people one-on-one coaching with me may be out of their budget, but Connection Corner, well, I don't know, you guys tell me. I feel like it's pretty good value for money, given you're getting live sessions with me in a group. So that's why I kind of priced it the way I did, is so that you can hopefully feel like it's really good value for money. So would you agree, ladies, since I've just kind of put that out there?
I think it's great value. My goodness, yeah, it's worth it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, her goodness, it is.
So if you are interested, I'll post the links to all of those things. If you are HSP extrovert or think you might be, please come and join our free Facebook group. You'll be able to interact with Terry, Laura, Carol, who I talked to the other day, me, that's where I hang out the most. It's a bunch of women who are absolutely amazing. They're generous with their time, they're generous with their support, and I know that these two in particular, and most of the other ladies in the group, would be more than happy to help you on your HSP extrovert discovery adventure and learn and grow and develop, because they've reaped the benefits of doing the work. So thank you again so much, ladies, for coming on. Any final comments before we wrap up?
I got nothing to say.
All good.
That's unusual.
All
Yeah, me
talked
too.
out. Excellent. Well, that's good. It means you managed to obviously get everything across that you wanted to get across. So thank you so much once again for joining me. And yeah, I guess I will see you both soon in the group
Yep.
or in Connection Corner. I'm trying to remember what week it is. I'm a little bit frazzled at the moment with HSP Extrovert Awareness Week. So thanks again. I'll let you go because it's getting late, and I'll turn off the live stream first, and I'll stop recording.